Every day, on a noisy corner of a forgotten street, a tired woman lit a charcoal stove before the sun even woke up. Her name was Grace. By mid-morning, she had already bargained at the market, carried heavy bags with aching joints, and stretched every grain of rice like it was gold. To most people, she was just Mama Grace, the roadside food seller. They didn't know that this small stall was all she had left of a life that once looked very different. They didn't know that one simple habit, giving free food to a homeless boy, would one day bring 4 black SUVs to her tiny shop. One quiet morning, as she stirred her pot just like any other day, the sound of engines broke through the usual noise. Grace looked up. 4 black SUVs rolled slowly down the narrow road and stopped right in front of her stall. Doors opened. Men in suits stepped out, scanning the area. Neighbors watched from a distance, whispering. Grace's heart raced. Was she in trouble? Had someone come to shut her down? In all her years on that roadside, she had never seen anything like this. And then, from the last SUV, a young man stepped out, well-dressed, confident, and strangely familiar. Who was he? Why had he come? And how could one small act of kindness lead to a moment like this? Before we dive deeper, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you. And if you're new here, click on the subscribe button so you never miss any of our upcoming videos. To understand why those SUVs came, we have to go back to when Grace was not Mama Grace, the roadside seller, but simply Grace, a young woman with a degree, a neat little provision store, and a smile that made customers feel at home. She worked hard, saved carefully, and dreamed of expanding her shop, helping her parents, maybe traveling one day. She wasn't rich, but she was stable. People respected her. She had a boyfriend, Daniel, who praised her determination and promised they would build a future together, a bigger business, a family, children who would never taste the kind of hunger she had known growing up. For a while, life seemed to keep its end of the deal. Then, slowly, things began to change. First came the illness. At the shop, she started feeling dizzy for no reason. Her hands shook, her vision blurred. One day she collapsed and woke up in a clinic bed with the nurse explaining tests and bills she couldn't afford. At the same time, prices rose at the market. A big supermarket opened nearby, stealing some of her customers. Her landlord raised the rent, because everything is expensive now. Daniel lost his job. He became withdrawn, then bitter, then careless. He started borrowing from her shop's money, promising, "I'll return it, just give me time." Time passed, the money didn't return. Pressure mounted from every side. Medical bills, rent, suppliers asking for their balance. Grace tried to juggle everything at once, but her body was weak and her savings were thin. Then, one day, she arrived at her shop and found a heavy padlock on the door and a notice, "Locked due to unpaid rent." Her heart sank. Everything she had fought for, the shelves, the stock, the little community she had built, was gone in a single cold decision. Daniel disappeared not long after, leaving no note, no forwarding address, nothing. Grace moved from the woman with the shop to the sick woman who used to have a shop in what felt like minutes. With nowhere else to go and no strength for heavy labor, she did what she knew best: cook. A neighbor lent her an old pot. Someone allowed her to rent a small corner of the roadside for a small weekly fee. A supplier, remembering the woman she used to be, agreed to give her rice and beans on credit. And so her world shrank to a charcoal stove, a faded umbrella, 3 plastic chairs, and a constant question: will today's sales be enough to try again tomorrow? Her dream was no longer expansion, it was simply survival. To pay a bit of rent, to buy a bit of medicine, to keep going. It was in this stripped-down life that he appeared, a small figure at the edge of the road, barefoot, clothes torn, clutching a nylon bag that seemed to hold everything he owned. He hovered near the stall, pretending to be just passing by, but his eyes betrayed him. They followed each plate she served. When customers lifted spoons, his throat moved as he swallowed dry. Grace noticed him. At first, she felt irritation and guilt fighting inside her. She thought, I don't even have enough. If I start feeding every child who looks hungry, how will I survive? She tried to focus on her pot. But then she saw his hands shaking slightly, the way his eyes dropped quickly when anyone looked at him. She called out, almost against her own will, "Hey, you! Come here, my son. Have you eaten today?" He tried to deny it. "I'm fine," he murmured, but his stomach growled loudly, exposing the truth. She sighed, opened the pot, and scooped rice and beans onto a plate. She added a small piece of meat she'd meant to sell. She said, "Sit. Eat." It was a simple plate of food, but to him, it felt like a miracle. He ate slowly at first, then more eagerly while still trying not to appear desperate. When he finished, he whispered, "Thank you, Ma." That could have been the end. One act of kindness in a long, hard day, but the next afternoon he came again, and again, and again. Grace found herself, without even thinking, always keeping one plate aside in case that boy comes. Over time, he told her his name, David. Roughly 12 or 13, he thought, old enough to know the world could be cruel, young enough to still hope sometimes. He spoke in fragments. His mother had been a street vendor too. She fell sick and passed away. Family members said they couldn't afford another mouth at the table. He drifted to the streets, empty buildings, corners under the bridge, wherever he could lay his head without being chased. "Auntie, why are you always giving me food?" he asked her one day. "You don't even know me." She looked at him and answered simply, "I don't need to know you to know you're hungry. When I see you, I see my own child." Those words carried a secret pain. Grace herself had known loss, choices, regrets that lay buried beneath her daily struggle. Sometimes, as she watched David eat, she felt an ache she couldn't fully explain, as if life had handed her back a piece of something she once lost. He would hum songs his mother used to sing, mention places he had lived that sounded disturbingly familiar. Little details made her heart twist, but fear kept her from asking too many questions. What if his story opened old wounds? What if the overlap between their lives was more than coincidence? So she focused on what she could do: cook, serve, listen. One plate at a time, she became her safe place. Then came the worst season. The landlord threatened to give her a small spot to someone else if she didn't pay. Her body weakened again. Sales dropped. Some days she barely made enough to buy charcoal for the next morning. And still, when David appeared, she found herself choosing him over profit. There were days she gave him the last full portion and went home with only scraps for herself. At night she would pour out a few coins on her thin mattress and whisper, "God, I don't know how this makes sense, but please don't let this be the end of my story. Don't let this boy disappear like everything else." Then one day, David stopped coming. She kept a plate aside for him. It went cold, uneaten. The next day she did the same, nothing. Days turned into weeks. She asked around. Some people thought they'd seen him walking with strange men. Others had heard of a boy fainting near the market. Rumors, nothing solid. The chair where he used to sit stayed empty, a quiet wound in her daily routine. Life pressed on with its usual cruelty: rent, sickness, slow sales. But now her struggle carried a new layer of grief, the fear that she had lost, once again, someone she cared about. Maybe you're listening to this and you're thinking of a time you helped someone and wondered if it mattered. Maybe you're in a season where you're giving everything: time, money, energy, love, and nothing seems to come back. This story doesn't promise that every act of kindness will return in 4 SUVs with cameras and papers and public honor. Life isn't always like that. But it does remind us of something powerful. Nothing you give in love is ever wasted. Someone is watching, God is watching, and life has a way of bringing back what you sow, often from directions you never imagined. Have you ever experienced a moment when kindness came back to you unexpectedly? If this were your story, what part touched you the most? The fall? The empty chair? Or the day the SUVs arrived? Share your thoughts in the comments. Your story could strengthen someone who is close to giving up. If this story touched your heart, please hit the like button. It helps more people see stories like this. Share this video with someone who feels like their kindness doesn't matter. And if you love stories of faith, sacrifice, and surprising miracles, subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss our weekly uploads. Thank you for staying with us till the end. Until next time, remember, sometimes the smallest plate of food can lead to the biggest miracle.